Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, holding his morning coffee in one hand while watching the stars through the main view screen. The ship had been flying through deep space for 3 weeks now, carrying medical supplies to the outer colonies. It was quiet work, but Jake liked it that way. No drama, no politics, just him and his crew delivering things that people needed. The Liberty was not a fancy ship. She was old, built 30 years ago when humans first started exploring this part of the galaxy. Her hull was scratched from years of space travel, and some of her systems made strange noises when they worked. But she was tough, reliable, and fast when she needed to be. Jake had been her captain for 5 years now, and he trusted her completely. The bridge was small and comfortable. 5 crew members worked at their stations, each one an expert at their job. They had been together for months now, and they worked like a well-oiled machine. Jake knew he could count on every one of them. Lisa Carter sat at the navigation station, her fingers dancing across the control panel as she checked their course. She was young, maybe 25, but she had the best sense of direction Jake had ever seen. She could find her way through any part of space, even places where the star maps were wrong. At the engineering station, Pete Rodriguez monitored the ship's systems. He was a big man with gentle hands who could fix anything that broke. He had been working on spaceships since he was 16, and there was nothing about the Liberty that he did not know. Amy Walsh handled communications from her station near the back of the bridge. She was quiet most of the time, but when she needed to talk to other ships or space stations, she could make friends with anyone. She also spoke 6 different alien languages, which came in handy when they met other species. Danny Collins ran the weapon systems, though they rarely needed them. Most of the time, he helped Pete with repairs or assisted Lisa with navigation. He was always making jokes and keeping everyone's spirits up during long flights. Ben Parker was the newest member of the crew. He had joined them 2 months ago as a backup navigator and general helper. He was still learning, but he was eager and smart, and Jake was happy to have him aboard. The ship's computer chimed softly, breaking the peaceful quiet of the bridge. Jake looked up from his coffee, expecting to see a routine system update or maybe a message from one of the colonies. Instead, Lisa's console lit up with warning lights. She frowned at her instruments, then looked up at Jake with surprise in her eyes. "Captain, we have incoming ships," she said. 12 vessels, unknown design. They're approaching fast. Jake set down his coffee cup and walked over to look at Lisa's screen. The radar display showed 12 blips moving toward them in a tight formation. The ships were big, much bigger than the Liberty, and they were definitely not human. "How far away?" Jake asked. "About 10 minutes at their current speed," Lisa replied. "Sir, they're broadcasting on all frequencies. It sounds like they want us to stop." Jake nodded and returned to his captain's chair. In the 6 months they had been running cargo out here, they had met other alien ships many times. Most of them were friendly traders or explorers, just like humans. A few had been suspicious or unfriendly, but they had always been able to talk things out. "Put it on the main speaker, Amy," Jake said. "Let's hear what they have to say." Amy's fingers moved across her console, and suddenly the bridge was filled with a loud, angry voice. The ship's computer translated the alien words into English, but the tone was clear in any language. "Attention, inferior species. You have entered the sacred space lanes of the mighty Zorithian Empire. Stop your vessel immediately and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your complete destruction." The entire bridge crew turned to look at each other. For a moment, nobody said anything. Then Pete started chuckling. Danny let out a snort of laughter. Soon, all 6 crew members were laughing. "Sacred space lanes?" Pete said, wiping tears from his eyes. "Did they just call us inferior?" "I think they did," Amy said, still giggling. "And they want to board us?" Jake was laughing too, but he was also thinking, the alien ships were big and probably had weapons. The Liberty was just a cargo ship with basic defensive systems. But something about the whole situation struck him as funny rather than threatening. "Amy, open a channel," Jake said, still smiling. "Let's see if we can talk to these folks." Amy nodded and activated the communication system. Jake cleared his throat and spoke in his most friendly voice. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the U's Liberty. Hello there. Are you guys new to this part of space?" There was a long pause. Then the alien voice came back, sounding even angrier than before. New? New? The Zorathian Empire has ruled this sector for 1,000 years. You will show proper respect, or we will blow your pathetic vessel into atoms. Jake looked at his crew, who were all trying not to laugh again. He shook his head and spoke into the communicator. "Well, that's interesting, because we've been flying through here for months and we've never seen you before. Are you sure you have the right neighborhood?" Another pause. This time, Jake could hear angry voices talking to each other in the background. Finally, the original voice came back. Silence. "You dare to question the Zorathian Empire? Prepare to face our wrath." On the main view screen, the 12 alien ships came into visual range. They were huge, dark vessels that looked like they were designed to frighten people. They had sharp edges and spikes all over their hulls, and they glowed with an ominous red light. They moved in a perfect formation, clearly meant to look intimidating. "Wow," Ben said quietly. "They really went all out with the scary design, didn't they?" "I think they're compensating for something," Lisa said, studying her instruments. "Look at how slow they're moving. And their engines are putting out so much heat I can see them from here." Pete was running scans on the alien ships. "Their technology is ... interesting. Everything is big and flashy, but it doesn't look very efficient. Kind of like they built their ships to look scary instead of to work well." Jake nodded, still watching the approaching fleet. The aliens were obviously trying to intimidate them, but something about the whole situation just seemed silly. The ships were too big, too slow, and too dramatic. It was like watching a movie villain who was trying too hard to be frightening. "Captain," Amy sighed, "they're demanding that we surrender and prepare to be boarded. They say they're going to search our ship and take whatever they want." Jake sighed and finished his coffee. "Amy, send them a message. Tell them we're carrying medical supplies for Colony 7. Ask them nicely to let us pass." Amy composed the message and sent it. A few seconds later, the alien voice exploded from the speakers. "Medical supplies? Medical supplies? The Zorathian Empire cares nothing for your pathetic colonies. You will surrender now or face annihilation." Jake looked around at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting to see what he would do. He could see they were not afraid, just curious about how this strange encounter would play out. "You know what?" Jake said, settling back in his chair. "I think we're going to have some fun with this. Lisa, maintain course and speed. Pete, keep an eye on their weapons. Amy, keep the channel open. Let's see what these Zorathians are really made of." The alien fleet was getting closer, and Jake could see more details on the view screen. The ships were covered in weapons, but they looked old and clunky. Their formation was impressive, but they moved like they were stuck in mud. "Sir," Danny said, "should I charge our weapons just in case?" Jake thought about it, then shook his head. "Not yet. Something tells me we won't need them. These folks seem like they're all bark and no bite." The Liberty continued on its course, flying straight toward the alien fleet. Jake sipped his coffee and watched the show, wondering what would happen next. Admiral Kethver stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Cosmic Dominator. His 4 eyes glowed with anger as he watched the small human ship continue on its path without slowing down. In all his years of military service, no species had ever dared to ignore a Zorathian ultimatum. The Cosmic Dominator was the pride of the Zorathian fleet. She was over 2 miles long, bristling with weapons that could destroy entire cities. Her hull was black as space itself, covered in sharp spikes and glowing red symbols that struck fear into the hearts of enemies. Behind her, 11 more warships followed in perfect formation, each one a deadly weapon of war. Kethver had been an admiral for 50 years. He had conquered 17 star systems and brought them under Zorathian rule. His name was spoken in whispers across the galaxy, a symbol of Zorathian power and dominance. He had never failed in a military campaign, never retreated from a battle, Never shown mercy to his enemies, the bridge of the Cosmic Dominator was a dark, imposing place. Red lights cast long shadows across the metal walls, and the air hummed with the power of the ship's massive engines. Dozens of officers worked at their stations, each one a veteran of countless battles. They wore black uniforms with silver insignia that marked their rank and achievements. "Admiral," said his tactical officer, a tall Zorathian named Vexstar, "the human ship continues to approach. They have not responded to our demands." Kethver's mandibles clicked together in a gesture of extreme displeasure. "Have they raised their shields? Are they charging their weapons?" "No, sir, they appear to be doing nothing." "Nothing?" Kethver's voice rose to a roar. "Impossible! They must be planning something. Perhaps they are trying to lull us into a false sense of security before they attack." His communications officer, a female Zorathian named Zixara, looked up from her station. "Sir, we are receiving another transmission from the human vessel." "Put it on the main speakers," Kethver commanded. The bridge fell silent as the human captain's voice filled the air. His tone was casual, almost friendly, as if he were talking to an old friend. "This is Captain Morrison again. Look, I don't know what your problem is, but we're just trying to do our job here. We've got sick people waiting for these medical supplies. How about you folks just move along and let us pass?" The entire bridge crew stared at each other in shock. Kethver felt his blood pressure rising. Never in his long career had anyone spoken to him in such a casual, dismissive manner. "Move along?" he whispered, his voice shaking with rage. "Move along?" His second-in-command, Commander Curtin, stepped forward. "Sir, perhaps they do not understand the situation. Their species may not be familiar with Zorathian military protocols." Kethver turned his 4 eyes on the commander. "Then we will educate them. Helm, bring us to attack formation. All ships prepare for battle." The Cosmic Dominator and her escort. Ships began to move into a battle formation that had been perfected over centuries of warfare. The massive vessels spread out in a wide line, their weapons turning toward the small human ship like the fingers of a giant hand closing into a fist. "Sir," reported the tactical officer, "all ships are in position, weapons are charged and ready." Kethver watched the human ship on the main view screen. It was so small compared to his mighty fleet, like a tiny insect about to be crushed by a giant's boot. Yet still it continued on its course, showing no signs of fear or submission. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "they simply do not understand what they are facing. Communications, open a channel to all ships in the area. Let every species within 100 light years hear what happens to those who defy the Zorathian Empire." Zixara worked at her console. "Channel open, sir. Broadcasting on all frequencies." Kethver straightened his uniform and composed himself. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of 1,000 years of Zorathian dominance. "Attention, human vessel. You have entered sacred Zorathian space without permission. You have ignored our lawful commands. You have shown disrespect to the Zorathian Empire and its representatives. This aggression will not stand." He paused, letting his words sink in. Around him, his officers nodded approvingly. This was how things were supposed to be done. "You have one final chance to surrender," Kethver continued. "Lower your shields, shut down your engines, and prepare to be boarded. If you comply, your deaths will be quick and painless. If you resist, we will make your final moments a nightmare that will echo through the ages." The transmission ended and the bridge fell silent. Every officer waited for the human response, expecting pleas for mercy or desperate attempts at negotiation. Instead, they heard laughter. It started as a chuckle, then grew into full-blown laughter. Not just one voice, but several, as if the entire human crew was laughing together. The sound echoed through the bridge of the Cosmic Dominator, and Kethver felt his 4 eyes narrow in confusion and rage. "Are they? Are they laughing at us?" Vexstar asked, his voice uncertain. The laughter continued for several more seconds. Then the human captain's voice came back, still sounding amused. "Sacred space? Deaths will be quick and painless? Are you guys serious? This is like something out of a bad movie." What's next? Are you going to demand tribute in the form of our firstborn children? More laughter from the human crew. Kethver felt his mandibles clicking rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among his species. Sir, Curtin said quietly, perhaps we should demonstrate our power. Show them what happens when someone mocks the Zorithian Empire. Kethver nodded. Slowly, yes, that is exactly what we should do. Tactical, target their engines, fire a warning shot. Show them we are not to be trifled with. The tactical officer's hands moved across his console. Targeting systems locked. Firing warning. Shot! A brilliant beam of red energy lanced out from the Cosmic Dominator's main gun. It streaked across space toward the human ship, designed to pass close enough to show the awesome power of Zorithian weapons without actually hitting the target. The beam passed harmlessly to the side of the human ship, missing by at least 1,000 meters. On the bridge of the Cosmic Dominator, alarms began to sound. What happened? Kethver demanded. Why did we miss? Vextar was frantically checking his instruments. Sir, the targeting computer shows a direct hit, but our sensors indicate the beam passed wide of the target. Impossible. Our weapons are the finest in the galaxy. Sir, the communications officer interrupted, we're receiving another transmission. From the human ship. Put it through, Kethver growled. The human captain's voice came through the speakers, still sounding annoyingly calm and amused. Nice light show, folks. Very colorful. Are you trying to signal us, or was that supposed to be a warning shot? Because if that was your best aim, you might want to go back to target practice. The bridge erupted in angry voices as officers tried to understand what had gone wrong. Kethver stood in the center of the chaos, his 4 eyes blazing with fury and confusion. Silence, he roared. All ships, open fire. Full bombardment. I want that human vessel reduced to space dust. The order went out across the fleet, and 11 mighty warships opened fire at once. The space around the human ship lit up with energy beams, missile explosions, and plasma bursts. It was a display of firepower that could have destroyed a small moon, and somehow, incredibly, impossibly, every single shot missed. The human ship continued on its course, completely unharmed, while the Zorithian fleet expended enormous amounts of energy shooting at empty space on the bridge of the Cosmic Dominator. Admiral Kethver stared at the tactical display in complete bewilderment. This was not how conquests were supposed to go. Captain Jake Morrison watched the light show outside his ship with growing amusement. The Zorithian fleet was firing everything they had, and the space around the Liberty was lighting up like a fireworks display. Energy beams streaked past in every direction, missiles exploded in brilliant flashes, and plasma bursts painted the darkness in shades of red and orange. None of it was even close to hitting them. This is actually kind of pretty, Lisa said from her navigation station. Like watching a sunset but with more explosions. Pete was monitoring the alien ships from his engineering console. Their weapons are powerful enough, but their targeting systems are terrible. I think they're using technology that's about 50 years behind ours. 50 years? Danny asked from the weapons station. That's ancient, no wonder they can't hit anything. Amy was listening to the alien communications. They're getting pretty worked up over there. Lots of shouting and what sounds like panic, Jake nodded, still watching the display. The Zorithian ships were impressive to look at, but they moved like they were stuck in thick mud. Their formation was breaking apart as each ship tried to get a better angle on the Liberty, but they were so slow that it looked like a dance performed underwater. Ben, how long do you think they can keep this up? Jake asked. Ben checked his instruments. At their current rate of fire, they'll drain their power cores in about 15 minutes. Maybe 20 if they're really efficient. And they haven't hit us once, Lisa added. Not even close. Jake made a decision. Amy, open a channel to the lead ship. Let's see if we can talk some sense into these folks. Amy activated the communication system. Jake cleared his throat and spoke in his most reasonable voice. Zorithian vessels, this is Captain Morrison again. You've been shooting at us for 10 minutes now, and you haven't hit us once. Are you guys okay? Your ships look like they're starting to overheat. There was a long pause. Then the alien admiral's voice came back, sounding even angrier than before. Overheat? Overheat? Zorathian. Ships do not overheat. We are the masters of advanced technology. Your puny vessel will be destroyed. Jake looked at his crew, who were all trying not to laugh. Advanced technology? Pete, what do you think? Pete studied his readings. Well, their engines are putting out about 3 times more heat than they should. Their weapons are overcharging every time they fire. And I'm pretty sure that big ship in the middle just lost power to 2 of its main systems. Should we tell them? Amy asked. Let's give them a few more minutes, Jake said. Maybe they'll figure it out on their own. The Zorathian fleet continued their bombardment, but Jake could see that their fire was getting weaker. The energy beams were not as bright as before, and the missiles were taking longer to reload. Several of the smaller ships had stopped firing completely, probably to avoid draining their power cores. Captain, Ben said, I'm reading massive energy fluctuations from their flagship. I think they're having some kind of system failure. Jake stood up and walked to the main view screen. The largest Zorathian ship was still firing, but he could see that its lights were dimming. Smoke was coming from several points on its hull, and it was starting to drift off course. That doesn't look good, he said. Suddenly, the flagship's transmission cut off in the middle of an angry rant. The ship's lights went out completely, and it began to tumble slowly through space. Power failure, Pete reported. Their main reactor just shut down. One by one, the other Zorathian ships began to experience similar problems. Their weapons fell silent, their lights dimmed, and they started to drift helplessly. Within minutes, the entire fleet was dead in space. Well, Jake said, that's not good. Danny was checking his instruments. Captain, I'm reading life support. Failures on at least 3 of those ships. Their crews are in real trouble. Jake didn't hesitate. Pete, launch the emergency repair drones. Danny, get the medical bay ready. Lisa, plot a course to the nearest ship that's in distress. Sir, Amy said. Are you sure? They were just trying to kill us. They were trying to kill us, Jake agreed. Key word being trying, but they're people, and people in trouble deserve help. The Liberty changed course and moved toward the nearest Zorathian ship. Jake could see that it was much larger than his own vessel, but it was clearly in bad shape. Its hull was scorched from overheated weapons, and there were no lights visible in any of its windows. Amy, try to contact them, Jake ordered. Amy worked at her console for a few minutes, then shook her head. No response, sir. Their communications are down. Then we'll have to do this the old-fashioned way. Ben, prepare the docking tube. Pete, get your tools. We're going aboard. The Liberty carefully approached the dead Zorathian ship. Jake had docked with alien vessels before, but this was different. These aliens had been trying to destroy them just minutes ago. Now they were helpless, and Jake's crew was their only hope for survival. The docking process took 20 minutes. The Zorathian ship was so much larger than the Liberty that it was like a small boat trying to dock with a cruise ship. But Lisa was skilled at this kind of work, and she managed to connect the 2 vessels without any problems. Jake suited up in his emergency gear and prepared to board the alien ship. Danny and Pete came with him, carrying repair equipment and medical supplies. They had no idea what they would find on the other side of the airlock. The interior of the Zorathian ship was dark and filled with smoke. Emergency lighting cast red shadows on the walls, and the air smelled of burned electronics. Jake could hear the sound of failing systems and the hiss of escaping air. Hello? He called out. Is anyone there? We're here to help. A weak voice answered from somewhere in the darkness. Jake followed the sound and found a group of Zorathian crew members huddled near what looked like a life support station. They were tall, insect-like beings with 4 arms and large compound eyes. Their black uniforms were torn and dirty, and they looked exhausted. One of them, who seemed to be an officer, looked up at Jake with surprise and fear. You are the humans, he said in broken English. Why are you here? Your ship is in trouble, Jake said simply. We came to help. The officer stared at him. But we attacked you. We tried to destroy your vessel, Jake shrugged. Yeah, that wasn't very nice. But you're in trouble now, and that's what matters. Pete was already working on the life support system. I can get this working again, but it'll take about an hour. The whole system overloaded when your weapons drained the power core. Danny was checking on the injured crew members. These folks need medical attention. Nothing serious? Just smoke inhalation and some minor burns? Jake looked at the Zorithian officer. What's your name? I am Subcommander Yextel, the alien replied, still looking confused. Well, Yextel, we're going to get your ship running. Again, then we'll help you contact your admiral and make sure everyone in your fleet is okay. Yextel's 4 eyes widened. You would help our entire fleet? After what we did. That's what people do, Jake said. When someone needs help, you help them. The Zorithian subcommander sat in stunned silence as Jake's crew worked to repair his ship. This was not how conquests were supposed to go. This was not how enemies were supposed to behave. Everything he had been taught about warfare and military doctrine was being turned upside down by these strange, kind humans. And somehow, that made him feel hopeful for the first time in years. Admiral Kethver sat in his command chair, staring at the dark screens around him. The bridge of the Cosmic Dominator was lit only by emergency lighting, casting strange shadows on the walls. His proud flagship, the terror of 17 star systems, was floating helplessly in space like a piece of junk. The emergency power was running out. Soon, even the life support would fail, and his crew would start to suffocate in the darkness. Kethver had commanded fleets for 50 years, but he had never experienced anything like this. His mighty weapons had failed him. His advanced technology had betrayed him. And worst of all, he had been defeated by a single small cargo ship. Admiral, wheezed his tactical officer from across the dark bridge. The humans ... they are docking with Ship 7. What are your orders? Kethver wanted to give orders. He wanted to command his fleet to fight back, to show these humans the true power of the Zorithian Empire. But his ships had no power, his weapons were dead, and his crew was barely breathing. What can we do? He asked quietly. We are helpless. Around the bridge, his officers sat in stunned silence. These were warriors who had conquered worlds, who had struck fear into the hearts of entire civilizations. Now they were as helpless as children on Ship 7. Subcommander Yextel watched in amazement as the human repair crew worked to fix his vessel. The human captain, Jake Morrison, had brought 3 crew members aboard. They moved through the damaged ship like they owned it, fixing things that the Zorithian engineers had given up on. The human engineer, Pete, was working on the main power core. His hands moved with sure confidence as he rewired damaged systems and replaced burned-out components. He hummed while he worked, as if repairing an enemy warship was just another day at the office. How do you know how to fix our technology? Yextel asked him. Pete looked up from his work and smiled. Energy is energy, my friend. Doesn't matter if it's human technology or alien technology. The basic principles are the same. But our systems are completely different from yours. Sure, they look different on the outside, but inside they all do the same job. Your power core takes raw energy and distributes it through the ship. Same as ours, just built in a different way. Pete went back to his work. Within an hour, he had the power core running better than it had in years. Lights came back on throughout the ship, and the air system started working again. Danny, the human weapons officer, was helping the injured Zorithian crew members. He had basic medical training, and he moved from one alien to another, checking their health and giving them water to drink. Why are you helping us? Asked one of the injured Zorithians. Danny shrugged. Because you need help. That's reason enough. But we are your enemies, are you? Danny asked. You seem like decent people to me, a little confused maybe, but decent. Jake Morrison was working with Yextel to contact the other ships in the fleet. One by one, they established communication with the disabled vessels. The situation was the same everywhere. Power failures, life support problems, and crews in distress. Captain Morrison, Yextel said, I must ask you something. Why are you doing this? We attacked you. We tried to destroy your ship. By all the laws of war, you should leave us here to die. Jake looked at him with genuine surprise. Leave you to die? Why would we do that? Because we are enemies, says. Who? Jake asked. I never agreed to be your enemy. You folks just showed up and started shooting. That doesn't make us enemies, it just makes you confused. Yextel stared at the human captain. In all his years of military service, he had never heard anyone talk like this. War was war. Enemies were enemies. That was how the universe worked. I do not understand, he said. Jake sat down next to him. Look, I don't know what kind of problems you folks have back home. Maybe you're running out of resources, maybe you're overcrowded, maybe you just got bad advice from someone. But attacking random cargo ships isn't going to solve your problems. The Zorathian Empire has always expanded through conquest, Yextel said. It is our way. How's that working out for you? Jake asked. Yextel thought about this. The Zorathian Empire controlled 17 star systems, but they were all primitive worlds with no real technology. His own fleet was using equipment that was decades out of date. They had no allies, no trading partners, and no friends in the galaxy. Not very well, he admitted. Then maybe it's time to try something different, Jake suggested. Meanwhile, repair teams from the Liberty were working on all 12 Zorithian ships. Jake had called for help from nearby human vessels, and 3 more cargo ships had arrived to assist. They brought supplies, equipment, and crews of volunteers who were happy to help. Admiral Kethver found himself aboard the Liberty, sitting in the ship's small dining room with Captain Morrison. The human had offered him coffee and something called a sandwich. The food was simple but good, and the coffee was better than anything he had tasted in years. I do not understand you humans, Kethver said. We are strangers. We attacked you without cause. We threatened to destroy you, yet you feed us and repair our ships. Why? Jake thought about this for a moment. Admiral, can I ask you something? Before you became a military officer, what did you want to be? The question caught Kethver off guard. No one had ever asked him that before. I wanted to be an explorer. I dreamed of discovering new worlds, meeting new species, learning about the universe. What happened to that dream? Kethver's 4 eyes dimmed. I was told that exploration was for the weak, that the strong took what they wanted by force. I was taught that the only way to succeed was through conquest and domination. And how has that worked out? Jake asked gently. Kethver looked around the small dining room. It was warm and comfortable, filled with the sounds of friendly conversation and laughter. Through the windows, he could see his own ships, now with their lights back on and their crews safe. Human repair teams were still working on them, fixing problems that had been ignored for years. It has led me here, he said quietly, helpless and dependent on the kindness of strangers. Not strangers, Jake corrected. Neighbors. That's what. We all are out here, Admiral. Neighbors sharing the same galaxy. Over the next few hours, more human ships arrived to help. They brought food, medical supplies, and replacement parts for the Zorithian vessels. They worked without payment or reward, simply because help was needed. The Zorithian crews watched in amazement as humans crawled through their ships, fixing things that had been broken for years. The humans asked for nothing in return. They shared their food, their tools, and their knowledge freely. This is not how conquests are supposed to work, Sub-Commander Yextel said to his admiral. Kethver nodded slowly. No, it is not. Perhaps that is because this is not a conquest at all. Then, what is it? I think, Kethver said, watching a human engineer show one of his crew members how to repair a damaged console, it is an education. By the end of the day, all 12 Zorithian ships were running better than they had in years. Their crews were fed, their injured were treated, and their ships were fully operational. The humans had even upgraded some of their systems, making them more efficient and reliable. As the sun set on this strange day, Admiral Kethver stood on the bridge of his flagship and realized that everything he thought he knew about the universe was wrong. And for the first time in 50 years, that made him feel hopeful about the future. English, how are you doing? Not bad, Keth. How's the cargo business treating you? Kethver laughed. a sound that would have been impossible 6 months ago. Better than I expected. We just delivered medical supplies to 3 different colonies. The payment was good, but the gratitude from the people was even better. Jake nodded. That's the best part of this job. Knowing you're actually helping people. Indeed. I never experienced that feeling during my military days. It is ... addictive. But behind Kethver, Jake could see Sub-Commander Yextel, who was now the ship's chief engineer. He had learned so much from Pete Rodriguez that he was now one of the best ship mechanics in the sector. How's the rest of the fleet doing? Jake asked. Wonderful. Ship 7 is running medical supplies to the Outer Rim. Ships 3 and 5 are helping to build a new space station near the Centauri system. And Ship 9 has started a trade route between the human colonies and the Andromedan merchants. Jake smiled. The transformation had been amazing to watch. The former Zorithian war fleet had become one of the most trusted cargo operations in the galaxy. They were known for their reliability, their kindness, and their willingness to help anyone in need. We have some news, Kethver continued. The Zorthian home government has officially disbanded the military conquest program. They want to focus on trade and exploration instead. That's fantastic news, Jake said. What changed their minds? We did, Kethver said proudly. When we returned home and told them about humans and the galactic community, they realized that conquest was not the path to prosperity. Trade and cooperation bring much better results. This was true. In the 6 months since the encounter, the Zorithian Empire had gone through a complete transformation. They had opened diplomatic relations with dozens of species, started trade agreements, and even joined several intergalactic peace organizations. There's something else, Kethver said, his voice becoming more serious. We have received word of another aggressive species, the Valkyrian Dominion. They are threatening several peaceful worlds in the Tau Ceti system. Jake frowned. Are they asking for help? Yes, the local authorities want to know if we would be willing to talk to them. Jake understood. In the past 6 months, word had spread throughout the galaxy about how the humans had handled the Zorithian fleet. Other species had started asking for help when they encountered aggressive neighbors. Sometimes a peaceful conversation was all that was needed to avoid a war. What do you think? Jake asked. Want to team up again? Kethver's 4 eyes brightened. I thought you would never ask. My crew and I would be honored to work with you again. 2 weeks later, Jake found himself in a familiar situation. The Liberty and 5 of Kethver's ships were approaching a fleet of Valkyrian warships that were threatening a peaceful colony world. The Valkyrians were reptilian creatures with a culture based on strength and intimidation. Their ships were even more aggressive-looking than the old Zorithian vessels, covered in weapons and painted in threatening colors. Alien vessels, you are trespassing in Valkyrian space, came the harsh transmission. Submit to our authority or be destroyed. Jake looked at Kethver, whose image was displayed on a secondary screen. The former admiral was trying not to laugh. They sound familiar, Kethver said. Very familiar. Jake agreed. Amy, open a channel to both fleets. When the communication link was established, Jake spoke in his usual calm, friendly voice. This is Captain Morrison of the UES Liberty and Captain Kethver of the Zorithian Merchant Fleet. We're here to talk. Talk? The Valkyrian commander sounded confused. We do not talk with inferior species. We command. Oh boy, Jake said with a sigh. Keth, want to take this one? Kethver cleared his throat and spoke to the Valkyrian fleet. Valkyrian commander, I am Admiral ... Excuse me, former Admiral Kethver of the Zorithian Empire. 6 months ago I said the exact same words to Captain Morrison. Zorithian Empire? The Valkyrian voice carried a note of respect. We have heard of your conquests. Yes, well, about that, Kethver said. Let me tell you what actually happened when I tried to conquer a human cargo ship. For the next hour, Kethver told the story of that day 6 months ago. He described how his mighty fleet had been defeated not by superior weapons, but by superior kindness. He explained how the humans had saved his crew and changed his entire understanding of what it meant to be strong. The Valkyrian commander listened in growing amazement. You gave up conquest for cargo hauling? I gave up conquest for friendship. Kethver corrected. And it has been the best decision of my life. Jake joined the conversation. Commander, what's your name? I am War Leader Scrath of the Valkyrian Dominion. Nice to meet you, Scrath. Can I ask you something? What do you really want? I mean, what would make you and your people truly happy? The question seemed to catch the Valkyrian off guard. We want respect, recognition, a place in the galaxy where we matter. And you think conquest will give you that? It is all we. No, Jake nodded. I understand. But let me ask you something else. Have you ever had a real friend? Someone who cared about you not because they feared you, but because they genuinely liked you? There was a long pause. No, Valkyrians do not have friends. We have allies of convenience. That sounds lonely, Jake said gently, not another pause. It is. Well, Jake said, if you're interested, we'd like to be your friends. No conquest required, no submission demanded. Just friendship. Scrath's voice was uncertain. What would that involve? Coffee, Kethver interjected. It always starts with coffee. 3 hours later, Scrath found himself aboard the Liberty, sitting in the dining room with Jake and Kethver. He was a large, lizard-like creature with scales that changed color, based on his emotions. Right now, they were a confused mixture of green and blue. This is very strange, he said, sipping the coffee that Jake had given him. In Valkyrian culture, enemies do not share food. Good thing we're not enemies, Jake said, but we threatened you. We came here to conquer this system. Yeah, well, people make mistakes, Jake shrugged. The important thing is what you do next. Kethver leaned forward. Scrath, let me ask you something. What kind of life do you want for your children? Children? Scrath looked surprised. I have 2 young ones back home. Do you want them to spend their lives fighting and conquering? Always. Looking over their shoulders for the next enemy? Scrath's scales shifted to a deep purple, which Jake had learned meant sadness among Valkyrians. No, I want them to be safe. Happy, free to explore the galaxy and make friends with other species. Then maybe it's time to stop fighting, Jake? Suggested. Scrath looked around the warm, friendly dining room. Through the windows he could see his own war fleet, now surrounded by human and Zorithian ships. But instead of a battle formation, they looked like ships gathering for a celebration. How do I explain this to my superiors? He asked. The same way I did, Kethver said. Tell them the truth. Tell them that there's a better way to live. 1 year later, the galaxy was a very different place. The Valkyrian Dominion had become the Valkyrian Republic, dedicated to exploration and peaceful trade. The former Zorithian Empire was now known as the Zorithian Federation. A founding member of the new Galactic Cooperation Council, Jake Morrison continued to run cargo between the colonies, but now his routes took him through space that was safer and more friendly than ever before. Wherever he went, he was greeted by old friends and new allies, species that had once been enemies but were now partners in building a better galaxy. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, Admiral Kethver and War Leader Scrath worked together to help other aggressive species learn the same lesson they had learned, that true strength came not from the power to destroy, but from the courage to help others. The galaxy was still full of challenges and problems, but now it faced them together, as friends. And it all started with a simple act of kindness from a cargo ship captain who chose to laugh instead of fight, and to help instead of hurt. Jake often said that the best part of his job was not delivering cargo, but delivering hope. And in a galaxy full of former enemies who had become friends, hope was the most valuable cargo of all.